So I'm director of research for INSERM, and I work at the Institute for System Neuroscience in Marseille, in France. And another hat that I have is to be the editor-in-chief of eNeuro, the open access journal online of the Society for Neuroscience.
And in which way eNeuro is different from other scientific journals?
So in the realm of scientific journals, you have essentially two main categories. One is for-profit publishers, so journals like Nature Group, Cell Press, Elsevier, and you have non-profit journals like Journal of Neuroscience or eNeuro. Many of them belong to scientific societies. So the goal is not to make money. The goal is just to publish science. So these are really two very different types of journals. Why? Because in the non-profit journals, the papers are handled by active neuroscientists. In for-profit journals like Nature, Cell Press, the reviewing editors are not active scientists. That is their job, to handle papers. So that's a major difference. In papers from society journals, you are handled by active scientists who understand what you are doing. And of course, the major difference is money, because Elsevier, for example, has an annual profit of 1 billion.
Oh, wow.
1 billion of profit, not revenue, just profit, which is more than the Howard Hughes budget for research. Yes, so the publishing industry is one of the most profitable of all businesses in the world. And this money is coming from governments through grants. But this is not the case for the non-profit journals. So this is one major issue about eNeuro. Now, the way it is different is the way it is constructed. In the vast majority of journals, your paper is being sent to a reviewing editor, then who assigns reviewers, and then these reviewers, they make some comments, and then the reviewing editor will make a decision to reject the manuscript or to accept a revision or to accept the manuscript based on the reviews that are coming. Now, most of the time, and it was one of the reasons why I applied for this position, is everyone has experienced this. You have one positive reviewer, one negative reviewer, and most of the time, 99.9% of the cases, the reviewing editor will say, no, I reject it because of the negative review. Now, when I created eNeuro, I decided to follow the steps of eLife. And eLife set up this procedure where the reviewing editor has to make a synthesis of all the arguments of the reviewers and the reviewing editor together discuss about the outcome of the paper. And they must all agree on the final decision and about the message that is conveyed to the authors. So there cannot be a positive and a negative evaluation. It's a consensual decision that is sent to the authors. In fact, many authors are dissatisfied by outcomes in most journals, and they make appeal because they don't understand why negative and a positive make always a negative. But at eNeuro, I get less than 4 or 5 appeals per year.
Oh, wow. That's really low.
Which is, yes, it's very low. So it means that papers are rejected. The authors know why. It's factual. And there's no reason to make an appeal because all the arguments are quite factual and clear. The other thing that I insist with the reviewing editors is to provide facts, as I just said. And most importantly is that the review must be helpful to the authors. Most of the time when we receive a review for our own paper, it's like punishing expedition. So it's like we expect to be beaten. Here, I want to change the strategy. We are here to help authors to make a better science. So we try to make always helpful comments, even if we reject the manuscript. So these are the main thing. And the other innovation that we have that we were the first to introduce in neuroscience is the double-blind review process. So the reviewers do not know who the authors are. So we remove the first page, which contained the names of the authors, and when the manuscript is received, staff is checking to verify, according to the instruction to authors, that everything that could identify the authors is removed.
Ah.
So you cannot write as we have shown. You replace it as was shown before, but then you don't know whether it's the author or somebody else. So it's a double-blind review process, and it's quite successful. And people say that very positive things about that. So the reviewers do not know. Usually they do not know where it's coming from, which is better for the young generation, for young scientists, because they are handled as at the same level as established scientists. And one thing that we checked is that we are perfectly gender equal. The NIH is complaining that female authors, first authors or last authors, stand less chances to get published as compared to male authors. We are perfectly equal at iNeuro. I think it's a consequence of the double-blind system.
So you're working quite a lot to avoid any potential bias in the reviewing process, actually.
Yes, exactly. So it's these are human factors. You can never have a perfect system, but the idea is to remove the bias whenever we can. We cannot get rid of it. It's not possible. And for example, for double-blind review, you may have seen the story on the poster or at a conference. Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. You know the authors? Okay, do your job nevertheless. So the question is to remove the bias when we can. So these are major innovations at the journal, plus the fact that we publish also negative results.
That is quite important.
Yes, so the NIH is complaining that they found over and over the same studies, which are never published because they lead nowhere, but nobody knows. It's very important for preclinical studies, for example, when you study a disease and a new drug, for example. And so we are publishing negative studies because our goal, as I said, is to help authors and to help the community, the neuroscience community. So this is a very important message for the community to know that, well, this is a negative result, so there's no point in making these experiments again, you know. And there are many other innovations, including publishing reproduction of important studies.
Oh, yes.
There's also a big talk in the community about the fact that science is not reproducible, reproduction studies, because it's important for the community.
Another innovative strategy that you implemented in eNeuro was registered reports, and I think it was quite new. Could you explain a little bit the concept and if it was difficult to implement?
So the concept is very easy. So it does not apply to every scientific project for a very obvious reason. So the idea is simple. You have an hypothesis that you want to test, and you plan your experimental protocol. And this is what you submit to the journal. And that is what is reviewed. Now, if the reviewers think, oh, that's a good idea to test, and if the experimental protocol makes sense, it can be reviewed and changed and everything. But once it's accepted, you have guaranteed publication, whether the outcome is positive or negative. So again, it's like a negative study. Uh, uh, but you need to follow exactly the experimental plan. Now, if you do something else and you submit the manuscript at that time, then the paper will be evaluated as a novel manuscript because you have changed the experimental protocol. Now, this has advantages. First, if you get negative results, you get published anyway. Okay. Second, your experimental protocol is validated beforehand. Now that saves a huge amount of time and money, because the reviewers may point at weaknesses and say, oh no, you should do this and this and this and that. And that's the best strategy to plan experiments. So of course, it cannot apply to things that are exploratory. You need a very strong hypothesis. It works well, for example, for a preclinical study where you plan to give a specific drug and test some behavioral outcome or whatever. Now it doesn't apply to many fields in neuroscience, where when you do experiments, sometimes you will find something that you didn't plan, and then you go in this direction. So registered reports are for very specific categories, but each time the authors found it extremely helpful, clarifying their idea and helping them making an improved experimental protocol to start with.
It sounds like a huge gain of time and energy and money also, because
yes.
Then you
yes.
have a refined protocol, and you stick to that, and whatever happened, it will be published. It sounds like a win-win situation.
So it was very easy to implement because it's very easy to design. So it's not well used by the community. So we do publish them. We have many a year, but not as I was expecting. Maybe it's not known enough. We do advertise it from time to time, but I think that the community is not aware of this possibility. But it's a very good opportunity even to have your protocol evaluated before doing the experiments. And in fact,
yes.
yeah, go ahead. But it shortens it, because then you don't have a revision process, which may take 6 months or a year because you didn't think about something that the author spotted, the reviewer spotted beforehand.
I would expect actually people to maybe be afraid that their idea or hypothesis will be stolen. It feels like it's a common fear in a lot of scientists, and even when participating in conferences, sometimes do not have any poster publication because they're afraid of getting their idea stolen. And that's why I was wondering if it was difficult to implement in a way that it needs to be, I guess, really secured.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. Having said that, you have guaranteed publication. So even if you're scooped, it will still be published.
That is a really good incentive.
Yeah, but when you think about it, is that when you plan your experiments for a registered report, you have everything already in place, maybe in your lab, all the setups and the equipment and the drugs, whatever. Now, if someone reads that and want to do it, it may take some time before they get ready. But when you get the reviews back, well, you're set up. Yeah. So, well, there is always a risk, but I think it's limited.
And that is something that I didn't see in a lot of, okay, you have neuroscience, but even in other journal and scientific field, it's not something that is really widely used, registered report or even negative results in general.
Well, there's a reason for that, for negative results, because everyone is after a high impact factor or the highest possible impact factor. Now, if you have a negative result, nobody's going to cite the paper.
Yeah.
It's helpful to the community, but in terms of citation, it will be minor. So journals, for-profit journals, which are after a high impact factor because they want to generate more money, then they don't want to publish that kind of paper. But at eNeuro, I don't care about the impact factor. I care about the reputation of the journal in terms of excellence of science, and the impact factor, which is a wrong metric anyway, but there are many papers on that. It's not an issue for me. What is important is to be helpful, to be helpful to the community, and that's it, and to have a good reputation of publishing very good science, which we have now.
Which is really great to hear. So I feel like eNeuro is feeling a bit like a guinea pig with a lot of testing a lot of different initiatives and a lot of different strategies. Do you plan to implement other innovative strategies in the future? Or?
Yes. Well, we have as I said, we are here to provide useful information to the community. So we have a series about experimental bias. There are always problems of interpretation for genetic studies, chemogenetics, optogenetics, behavioral studies. So we publish that kind of series, which are mostly commentaries, which help the community to build better projects or to improve their interpretation of their own data. So that's something that we do on a regular basis, which is important. Now, another thing that I'm thinking about, and you're right, in eNeuro, the advantage that we have is to be highly flexible and highly dynamic. So we can make experiments and test things. There's a big talk right now, big questions about the future of the publishing world.
Oh.
How is it going to evolve? Are we going to keep journals and for-profit journals, for example? Or should we change the format of how it's done? So there is a lot of discussion of the possibility to have post-publication peer review. The idea being that you have finished your story, you write the paper, and then it's published like this and reviewed afterwards by the community, for example. And then the authors can make changes and curate the paper, make it better, and then it's there, stays in the journal that way. The idea behind it is to accelerate the publication of the work instead of having eternal cycles of revisions, maybe ended up into a rejection at the end. This is a very important question. It's very difficult to do. There are drawbacks and advantages. And I'm going to open soon a blog post on our website. And I'm going to ask the community to comment about it, to share their own ideas, the benefits they would see in that kind of system, how we could implement an experiment, if we must do that or not. It's a very complicated question. For example, you are a journal with a good reputation, okay, to publishing solid science. Fine. Now you decide to publish a paper which has not been peer reviewed. Now this paper happens to be a fake story or okay, manipulated data or whatever. That would be considerably damaging for the journal, because even after review, it would be bad, but it would still be there. So how do you do that? Do you remove it or not? But then it goes against the publication before peer review. So there are many things that that are at stake, but there is this possibility that also all journals, all scientific journals may disappear one day, and everything will be on repositories like the archive systems, and papers will be read and commented upon, and then the authors can try to improve based on the comments of their readers. That's also another possibility. We don't know what's going to happen, but clearly many scientists are not satisfied with the present state of the publishing landscape. And it's not the fault of the publishers, especially the for-profit publishers. The fault is ours, because we accept it.
There's also a weird interaction between how to obtain when you are applying for grants and the number of publication and the high impact factor. So it seems to be a bit of a loop, a bit of maybe a toxic relationship between both. And
yes, that you're absolutely right. This is the main, in fact, this is the core of the problem. The core of the problem is that the grant evaluation uses that kind of index, the impact factor of the journal where you publish, or if you want to get a position at the university or promotion. This is what panels are looking at. But these are scientists who make these evaluations. Now, if we decide as scientists not to look at the impact factor of the journals as a criterion to evaluate the value of an individual, then we don't need the impact factor anymore. It's our decision. It's not the decision of the journals who rely on impact factors.
So when do we start the revolution?
Well, as I said, it must be a collective decision. We know the problem and we know the solution, because the solution must come from us. If we carry on validating the system, then, well, Nature and Cell and Elsevier, they will make a huge profits. I mean, it's not them imposing something onto us. It's just us accepting this and playing the game. So they would be stupid not to play the game because they get money out of it. So this is where there is a lot of things that of thinking in the community that must take place. How we should reform the system, because yes, it's twisted now in a wrong way. It evolved. In fact, I see it as like the brain. It's an emerging phenomenon. It emerged. It's not like somebody decided that, oh, we will work that way. No, it emerged from us. But the best actors are it's the young generation. In fact, not the old farts like me, but the young generation is best poised to change the rules. But we'll see.
And
so the blog post of eNeuro is there for that.
And so, as a personal opinion, what you would like to see the future of science publication to be?
So I shouldn't say that because I'm editor-in-chief of a journal, but in an ideal world, it would be like in physics, but physics is particular because it's more math and it's very easy for a reviewer to check mathematical equations and to solve them. But in the archive system, scientists post their papers there and it's evaluated by the community. So they do it proactively and they make some comments and the authors may change a few things. Now, what's happening is that when these papers have gone through a set of internal reviews by the community like this, after some time, they may be deemed as perfect and you send it to a journal and the journal in many instances accepts without even sending it to review because it's gone through already a huge set. You may not even need a journal if it has been validated by the community. Can we do that for neuroscience? It's more difficult because how are you going to review something which you cannot check? You cannot check. You have to take for granted what the authors have been doing in terms of experiments. And you cannot verify what they did. So it's more difficult than in physics. Theoretically, we could review each other on the bioRxiv system. Now, if you look at bioRxiv, I put my papers on bioRxiv. I placed many of them. I never got one single comment. Zero, never, ever. Now in physics, they do that all the time. It's been going on for a while. Not in neuroscience. It's not a habit yet. Maybe because it's not suited because of the field itself. I don't know. It's not being used. But ideally, that's what I would like to have. I place my paper, other people evaluate it, say, oh, no, you should do this and that to make your conclusion stronger. I would decide yes or no, I'm doing the experiment, and then say that here it is. Here are the results. And now it's the brick that I added to the wall of knowledge.
So let's see how it goes. And otherwise, for a last word, maybe you have a last comment or advice for the early career scientists, the young generation that may not be in neuroscience.
Okay. So if you see something wrong, act, be proactive, get together. Now you have the social media to gather a community, to be proactive. So you are the driving force, the young generation, PhD, postdocs, assistant professors, etc. So you are the future. We are not the future. We are already the past, and we have done some damage in the field. So be proactive, and keep in mind that if you decide to give your money to for-profit journals, you contribute to bias the system. Prefer non-profit organizations like scientific societies or other journals which are non-profit.
And for the little baby neuroscientists, please publish in eNeuro.
Yes, of course, publish in your support a journal that is there to serve the community. Go to the website. You will see how many reviewing editors we have from all over the world. That these are the people who handle your manuscripts, and you see that the vast majority of the fields of neuroscience are represented by at least one reviewing editor. So and these are active neuroscientists and leaders in their field, and they do a magnificent job.